Hey, Sleepy Sheepy here. Today we're going to be looking at a level 80 Strength Faith build using the Magma Wyrm Scalesword. For this build we're going to need 18 points in Faith and 15 in Dexterity. So I hit those minimum caps for the weapon and then put the rest of my points into Strength, as well as 40 into Vigor and then 25 into Endurance. That way we can hold the Clawmark Seal as well as wear our armor set, which is going to be Lionel's Helm, the Knight's Cavalry Armor, and then Lionel's Gauntlets and Greaves. We're also going to use the Great Jar's Arsenal because this weapon is pretty heavy, along with the Erdtree's Favor +2, Bullgoat Talisman, and then Shard of Alexander or Claw Talisman, depending on whether you're going to be going for more jumping attacks or more Ashes of War. For my physic, I'll be using the Flame Shrouding Crack tier as well as the Crimson Bubble tier. You could put on a Faith Knot tier or a Strength Knot tier. I'd probably recommend the Strength Knot tier at this level, but you can really set it up however you'd like. The moveset for this build is pretty cool. It has the regular just kind of strikes that you'd associate with a curved greatsword. One-handed, you're going to get a little bit more range, and that's going to be true for the jumping attacks, especially the jumping heavy. The jumping heavy, when you're two-handing, is going to be a kind of slash slam down type thing, which is also the regular heavy and the charged heavy. So you get a decent amount of damage out, but not so much range. So it's kind of a give and take in that aspect. The star of the show here is going to be the Ash of War, which comes out in two parts. You have the first part with the explosion, and then you can do another slam down with a slide. And all this stuff together can do quite a bit of damage. You're also going to be boosting it with the Flame Shrouding Crack tier as well as the Shard of Alexander. So you get some extra damage there, but it can be difficult to land, and you can take quite a bit of damage while it's in the process. So I would say overall the moveset is interesting for sure. I'll kind of talk more about my feelings about it throughout the invasions though. I also did want to mention the crouch attack comes out pretty fast for this weapon, so this can be a nice follow-up if you land a light attack and then they roll towards you. You can usually get a roll catch with that crouching attack, so I also wanted to mention that. That pretty much covers everything that I wanted to say about the moveset and the build, so let's go ahead and jump into the invasions. I also would like to say, if you like the content, it'd be awesome if you wouldn't mind subscribing, but obviously you can always do whatever you want. Alright, so jumping into our first invasion, we have a 3v1 with one blue, one phantom, and one host. This started out with me shooting some jar cannon shots their way and chipping them a little bit, but it took them a little while to get back over to me, so I just started out here. But we have maybe a little extra salt, a little extra aggression due to those early jar cannon shots, so I'm able to kind of bait them towards me and land a 2-for-1 with the Ash of War, which was pretty nice. Kind of forcing them up the stairs into a narrow section of the map was, I think, a useful way to approach that situation, and it ended up working out pretty well, and I think the PvE kind of hits on somebody at some point. So altogether, it was kind of a lucky moment, but also with some intention in terms of isolating two people in a narrow space. And then it becomes a one-on-one with just me and the host. Maybe not exactly a one-on-one since I have a lot of bats on my side, but it ended up going on for more time than I was expecting, and I think that was kind of a theme with this particular weapon class. I don't typically use curved greatswords too often. I think there's a couple things that I don't really love about them, and one of them is going to be just the diagonal hitbox that you get when you have normal swings. So for me, if I'm on an incline and the swing doesn't kind of line up well with my opponent, so like that first swing starts high on the right and lands low on the left. If my opponent is off to my right and they're on an incline, they might be more likely to just completely miss the hitbox, and I won't get any damage for that hit even though they didn't roll out of it. So for me, the diagonal slashes have never really been my favorite. Another aspect that I don't love that I think is maybe more unique to this weapon is that, like, you kind of want to two-hand it because you get the extra strength scaling, but the range is a little bit limited with the two-handed curved greatsword. So I think it's much more preferable to have the one-handed moveset, and I do kind of adjust for that later on with using a Clawmark Seal in my offhand and going for some catch flame, but I would say the two-handed curved greatsword moveset is fairly predictable and just I don't know. Some weapons make me feel like I'm bad at this game, and this could definitely be a skill issue on my side, just like not fully appreciating the power of curved greatswords. But for me, this was one of those weapons where I obviously tried to do my best with it, but it just didn't really feel good for me, and is a weapon class that I don't super enjoy. So I was really interested in this weapon just because I think that it's cool, and it does a lot of neat things, but for me, it being a curved greatsword that scales with strength, it was less fun than I was kind of anticipating. But I'd also be interested to see how everybody else feels about this. Like, if you're a curved greatsword user regularly for invasions, how does it go for you? Do you feel like there are certain aspects of it that are strengths that I think are weaknesses and just maybe don't understand fully? But I will kind of transition back into the invasion that's on screen. So I was able to kind of kill one phantom with a parry and then get this other phantom down to low health. But the chase down was not going well with the curved greatsword, so I switched over to the jar cannon and just kind of caught them as they were running. And then I did finally catch up to the host, but by that time a red had joined the fight. So I kind of wanted to include it just for completion, but I didn't really want to get in their way, and they seemed like they were doing a pretty good job, so I just kind of let them do their thing, and they were able to finish that off. This next one I really enjoyed. I thought it was pretty funny. We have somebody with a bolt of Gransax, and they're doing quite a bit of damage, and I'm not sure if we're desynced a little bit. Some of the packets may have kind of came a little bit late, but you'll see they get a backstab right there that looks a little bit funny, more reminiscent of early Dark Souls games. And they go for a wake up, and I'm able to combo that into my own backstab, which was kind of cool, I think. And that kind of puts us back on level footing. I go for a light roll catch and just kind of stun lock them for a second. You'll also see me using the crouching attack as a roll catch out of light attacks, which I found to be pretty useful. It's one of the faster moves. I do switch over to a parry shield and just go for a parry since I feel like they're playing a little bit predictably. And I was thinking about going for catch flame, but I was able to land just a couple hits, and there was another one where I just used the crouching attack to get the last HP for my opponent. I did eventually catch up to the host, and here I try to use catch flame a little bit more, and this part of there's a lot of weird stuff going on, but I'm not sure if you can hear the audio, but it sounds like, depends if you have headphones in or not, it sounds like my opponent is off to my right, even though they're right in front of me. So like I was hearing their kind of like reaction sounds, just like they were in a completely different spot, and I've never had that happen to me before. So if you do have headphones in, I feel like you might notice just kind of the weird audio associated with this person, and they are definitely lagging a little bit. So that's something that some people have been talking about on PC, is just more packet lossy moments, worse connection stuff. I feel like I'm seeing that a little bit more on PlayStation. So this was like a 3 or 4 minute one-on-one. I've trimmed it down towards just the end because it took so long. And that's another thing about the curved greatsword class that I have found frustrating, is just kind of the wind-up speed is kind of slow, and maybe everybody's just used to it. But just varying up my moveset, I tried to vary it up as much as possible and get roll catches and everything, but I still found that fights that would normally wrap up pretty quickly just with either burst damage or roll catching lasted much, much longer with this build than I was used to. I did have one fight where it went on for maybe like 5 full minutes, just a one-on-one with a host. I switched over to just 2 thrusting swords, and it was over in the next 10 to 20 seconds. So just the pressuring ability with a single curved greatsword is, I found to be limiting in some capacities. So I definitely had some losses in situations where I felt like normally I might win with a different moveset. And I don't know, this is like the first time I've done a showcase for a weapon that I just kind of felt was a surprising struggle to me. And I'm obviously still, trying to learn and get better at this game and be able to utilize all the different weapons and, weapon classes. But for me, curved greatswords have always been a little bit difficult in invasions, and one-on-ones too, for that matter. I've just found them to be kind of predictable and clunky, and I don't know. It's just interesting, especially because I know how popular like the Bloodhound Fag is and everything. Another aspect that I found interesting was just like how much this weapon weighed. So I think it weighs like 15 units, which is pretty substantial. And I was trying to set this build up with 2 of these initially, and just found that the sacrifices I would need to make for weight were not really worth it. But the two-handed, or the dual-wield moveset is a little bit nicer in my opinion. It is slower, but you get more damage output, and you also get horizontal slashes for your neutral attacks rather than the diagonal slashes. So for me, that was something I think I would be interested in. It felt like a more natural transition, especially because I had just done a curved, or a great axe weapon showcase with dual great axes, and I really enjoyed that and thought that that weapon class was challenging at first, but really fun by the end. And I didn't get that same feeling with this weapon class. It also could have just been like the days that I invaded. I might have ended up in situations that were a little bit more toxic than usual, and that's, you know, something that happens too. But I've always kind of felt like curved greatswords are kind of, I don't know, difficult to use in the context of multi-opponent invasions or just one-on-ones. So yeah, this has turned into more of me ranting about curved greatswords than I was kind of intending. But here, you know, I go for chase downs with this weapon, and my opponent is dodging pretty well. I'm trying to vary my timing. Eventually I do go for a running heavy, which does have slightly different timing than just like the running light attack, and it comes out a little bit later, so it can be nice for roll catching. But I found that if I didn't get off the Ash of War and kill a phantom early, things were likely to be difficult. So using something like Catch Flame in an offhand gives you access to the one-handed moveset, which I definitely preferred a little bit, and also comes out more quickly than just the normal neutral attacks. So definitely a good pressuring tool, and probably the approach I'd recommend if you are going to be using this weapon. But it does kind of, I don't know, it's kind of a shame to lose out on the scaling from strength, and also lose out on that unique heavy, which does have pretty good roll catch potential if they roll into you. If they don't, then you might be in trouble. You're probably going to miss. And it does make the jumping heavy attacks with the two-handed moveset much, like, you need to be very precise with your jump and really hope that you kind of catch them in the right spot. So it comes out quickly, especially the uncharged heavy for the two-handed moveset, but it's not as easy to land, I would say, as some other heavy attacks, like Claymores, for instance. I feel like they have one of the best heavy attacks of like the great weapon class. So for a great sword, that's like a fantastic heavy attack in my opinion. But for this, you know, you definitely do get a damage boost, and in some cases it's worth it. But yeah, it's just an interesting kind of choice. There you could see I went for the Ash of War, and I did some damage on my part, but I also got almost killed by everything that they were doing, and that's something that was kind of surprising about this. I felt like the stunlock potential, or length of stunlock, was a little bit slower than I would have hoped, or a little bit shorter than I would have hoped, and it meant that my opponents could really just kind of continue to send a lot of damage my way. I definitely died multiple times while trying to get off the Ash of War, and maybe certain circumstances where I shouldn't. That said, I felt like this particular invasion was pretty interesting. We had a wide variety of weapons. Somebody goes for the bubble Ash of War when they have almost no health, which I thought was kind of funny. There was also some sleep pots at the beginning, which were also interesting. And then there I got a really weird hitbox with the Ash of War. One thing about the hitbox with the Ash of War that I wanted to mention was a video recently came out from Gigasthiccas that talked about a true combo with it, and it's essentially if you land the first part of the Ash of War late, it true combos with the second part. So I'll link his video in the description because it's pretty cool, it's interesting. And I kind of had my eye on this weapon before the video came out, but seeing that video definitely encouraged me to give this weapon a try. And it's I'm not sure I really felt that extra like true combo potential so much throughout the course of these invasions, but it was also a little bit difficult to tell if it was, you know, the true combo working, or if everybody was just being continuously aggressive and didn't know about the second part of the Ash of War, which definitely was kind of an interesting aspect of the build in general. I think you don't really see this weapon too much, and because of that, people aren't as knowledgeable about the second part of the Ash of War as, you know, something like the Bloodhound Fang. One other aspect that might have contributed to my less than positive time with this was just that it is split damage, and at lower levels, I think potentially it's split damage with fire, so you're more likely to be in a scenario where it's raining or somebody's in water, so they get the extra damage negation for the fire damage. And I think, you know, split damage with fire is probably one of the worst split damage that you can get. Lightning is definitely the best and really makes dexterity strong, and typically you'll see people using just like frostbite damage with strength. Even though magic doesn't scale with strength, it's more useful, I think, than fire. So having a weapon that is split damage with fire is maybe one of the challenges, and maybe kind of limited my damage output and made this class seem a little bit less enjoyable. But a lot of my invasions went like the one that you just saw, where I might get an early heavy attack or Ash of War and, you know, end things pretty quickly, or I wouldn't get anything at all, and it would just kind of go on for a while. This next one was pretty funny in my opinion. I don't think I actually hit anybody during the course of it, but I do hit the trap, and that's enough to get the Phantom to be frostbitten, and then the cat just comes in and absolutely squishes the Faust there. So it was a good 2v2 with a pretty strong ally on my side, which was nice. Next up, we do have an invasion in Castle Sol. This one was a little bit interesting, one where I think my opponents had pretty good weapons to counter me, so I think it's a Nabakiba that this Phantom has, so a really long-range katana that can be pretty quick, and also the running heavy attack is going to be really strong because it has a lot of range, does a decent amount of damage. At this point, I go for one Ash of War without the follow-up attack, and then an Ash of War with the follow-up attack, and that almost kills the Phantom. And I think it was an instance where they might not have known that it had another part to it. And then here I try to chase them down. I think the ideal approach for that chase down there was to use Catch Flame, and I didn't utilize Catch Flame in that instance, and I think that allowed them to get away and heal. So definitely a little bit of a misplay on my part there, and that was something that I think I got frustrated with sometimes, was just not effectively being able to chase people down, and they'd frequently get away from me and heal. So that could also just be a roll catch potential thing, that or a roll catch issue thing with, you know, my skill level with this particular weapon class. But I was eventually able to get that Phantom, and then really just poor choices from the host right there, where they keep going for the Ash of War but keep getting stun locked out of it. So, you know, just kind of an interesting moment there. This next one I thought was kind of funny. It was 2v1, but the host gets separated early, and the Phantom's really between a rock and a hard place and just gets the full Ash of War, and it turns into a one-on-one pretty quickly. And then the host here has a very strange build, not really optimized for PvP from what I can tell. It looks like a staff in one hand, and then they go for a torch Ash of War, which probably didn't deliver the poise damage they would have needed to stun lock me out of what I was doing. And then this next one is a 3v1, and this is going to be the last one. One thing I did want to mention is somebody in the comments asked if I could make my videos shorter, which I thought was kind of funny, but also it did pose a good question. I know my videos are a little bit on the long side compared to some people that do similar things on YouTube, so if you are interested in my videos being a little bit shorter, this one's going to be a little bit shorter. If you like this length, you know, definitely let me know in the comments. If you like the longer videos, let me know. I guess I'm just trying to get a feel for what the ideal length for one of these showcases is. I feel like the longer the videos are, the more you have the opportunity to kind of learn from it. And like me making the videos, I learn a lot from watching my own gameplay, just, you know, trying to review what I could have done correctly or what I could have done better. and you know, a longer video could be useful for that, but it's also, you know, I'm not sure where everybody's attention span is at. I'm not sure how interesting I am as a person. So if like a 37-minute video is just not what you're going for, definitely let me know, because I'm happy to vary up the timing of video length here. And it's, you know, this channel is still pretty early on in its creation. So, you know, especially if you've made it this far, I feel like you're more dedicated than people that drop off in the first 5 minutes, which, you know, is totally fine, nothing against them, but the people that are at this point in the video are probably familiar with my content and maybe watch more of it on a more regular basis than some other people. So yeah, that's kind of all I wanted to say about video length. I might put out a poll or something just to get a better pulse check on it, but you know, if 20-minute videos are the thing you'd like to see, let me know. And this was just kind of a rough chase down. I do try to go for some fully charged heavies. I think there were some invasions where I was able to land a fully charged heavy, and that did tons of damage, but you really have to just kind of hope that your opponent runs at you and gets the timing wrong. The ending to this invasion I really liked. It involves me going for, I think, 3 consecutive backstabs, and you can see how well that works out for me. But overall, I'm a little bit happy to be done with this particular build. I'm excited to move on to the next one. If you do have recommendations for what you'd like to see, definitely let me know. I have kind of been, you know, keeping up with the comments and seeing what people are interested in, so I'm happy to try all that stuff. But you know, curved greatswords, I'm not sure if I'll be back to them at least anytime soon. I might have to, you know, try Moonveil for the first time just to recover some of my ego. So yeah, there you can see the first backstab I go for. There's the second one, and then third time is the charm. Really probably wasn't the best move or smartest move to go for all 3 consecutively, because it does make you open for it, but that was pretty fun at the end there. As always, if you made it this far, I just wanted to say thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate all the support, and I hope you have a good one.